What's going on? This is the OG Kickoff. I am Connor O'Gara. It just meant more. Will, gosh, we got a doozy today. We have a doozy. Somehow we have never done this game. We're doing the Bluegrass Miracle, November 9th, 2002. It is number 16, LSU, your Bayou Bengals against Kentucky. Will, it is the single most insane SEC finish of our lifetimes. I think it is more insane than the Henry Heave. I think it is more insane than the kick six. I think if you were trying to find a miraculous play to finish a football game, the list starts here, in my opinion. And I don't really know how much debate there is about that. But this play to end this game, it is an all-timer, and it is worth talking about nearly a quarter of a century later.
You know, and I'll say too, Connor, like people are going to see this title and be like, oh, Will, LSU homer, you're doing Bluegrass Miracle. You honestly had to convince me to do this game kind of from that angle. And I owe this game an apology because I knew about the finish, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't understand how chaotic and insane the other, 3.999 quarters of this game were going through. And so I just want to say sorry to the Bluegrass Miracle. It was a highlight we all saw growing up, coming up, Jefferson Pilot Sports and everything. I was very young for this game as well. But going back and watching the entirety of this game, what a masterpiece of a chaotic game.
It's actually what I have for we'll get into the categories in a bit here, but spoiler alert for the thing that I didn't remember until researching this game was how great this game was.
And if you took out the finish of this game, this would be the best game we've done so far.
It'd be up there. It would be up there.
At least me and you, because it was a win with 11 seconds left for Kentucky, and it was a back and forth. LSU controlled, led by 2 touchdowns at the half, and then you add on the finish, which is what everybody sees, and it's like I thought this game was just the finish. That's about half the story of this game because it's wild.
Yeah, this game is a lot more entertaining start to finish than, let's say, 2009 SEC Championship, a game that we've done. And it probably doesn't get enough credit for that. And you can make the case, maybe that's what fuels this Bluegrass Miracle, a name that I believe is contrived from, I did a little bit of research on this. The LSU communication staff had this in their immediate game story on LSU's official website, labeled as the Bluegrass Miracle, because I was wondering, I don't think someone on the Kentucky side would label this play this way, wherein it's a 74-yard touchdown, 75, whatever it was, to win it in the final seconds, in which you will never see a home crowd more stunned than what Commonwealth Stadium was on this day. And yeah, look, it makes it even crazier that, of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, you know exactly what I'm about to say. It makes it even crazier knowing that it happened after the very rare regular season Gatorade bath, which happened courtesy of one hefty lefty, Jared Lorenzen, with 2 seconds left in this game is when that happened. I originally thought it was 11 seconds. It was actually 2 seconds left. We had fireworks going off. We had fans going after the goalpost. We had fans that didn't know that Kentucky had lost this game. And it's the ultimate miracle play to stun the home crowd in Lexington. It is an iconic finish that also yielded, I think, every possible emotion of disbelief. Yeah. I think pure joy. Yes. Laughter, depending what your vantage point was of watching this game. Yeah. Rage. Yeah, all of it. If this happened in a video game, Will, you would rage quit before Devery Henderson hit the goal line and put his arms up to give LSU the game-winning touchdown. In the current context, it is a glitch that happened in real life. It is also the ultimate why we can't have nice things game for Kentucky football.
And honestly, you know what? I will say credit to the people of Kentucky, because after doing, the Lane Kiffin golf ball game, these people had cause for a riot. They were all already assembled, ready to storm the field. They tore down the goalposts like you talked about. So I'll give the crowd credit because they were loud. They brought it. I don't know if I've seen such a coordinated boo for as long in this game, and we'll get to that in a second. That it was like the middle of the second quarter. They just booed for about half of the second quarter. So I was actually really impressed with Kentucky fans for this game. But you're so right. This just goes to show why real life is so much different from a video game, because both teams wanted to rage quit and throw their controllers at different points in this game.
You bring up a good point, Will, because what we always bring up now with court storms, field storms, is that someone is destined to get hurt. And how did the LSU players and coaches I mean, as far as I've heard, escape that game unscathed. Meanwhile, you have all of these Kentucky fans and students that have made their way down from the stadium steps to the sideline and are fully on the sideline and fully on the field. And it is almost a band on the field type of scenario with how this plays out. How are there no injuries? How are there no real like fights that all of a sudden the camera's going to? Like, credit Kentucky fans for somehow not making more of this. And maybe there is a story and I just didn't necessarily see this, but everything that I watched, and I watched a lot of like the post game coverage as well, and trying to consume as much of that as possible. I didn't see any of that. And that's kind of maybe that's why this game is called the Bluegrass Miracle.
Yeah, and shout out to that name. Just goes to show, if you
Oh,
don't lose a big one in the state of Louisiana, because they will invent a dance, they will invent a saying, they will make it live in infamy, right? But you're so right. Like I said, I have massive respect for Kentucky fans for just how they brought it in this game, and they had plenty of reason to feel wrong. The way the team rallied, the way the defense specifically rallied, similar to the Lane Kiffin game that we just talked about. So yeah, let's get into it, man.
let's set the scene here where we were for this game. Will, I was in middle school. I was in 7th grade. Probably had like a basketball game or something like that during the day. And I think I remembered watching this highlight on Saturday night on Sports Center and just didn't think it was real. Didn't think that this was the type of thing that could actually happen. I'm like, why are they actually showing this last play? Like, we know what's going to happen. The ball's going to drop. There's no way. Like, he's way too far back. There's no way Marcus Randall could throw it this far. And then you see this happen. And I was at that time in my life pretty much unimpressed by everything. And when you're impressed by something as a 12-year-old, it kind of stands out in your mind. So I do remember watching this highlight. I definitely was not watching this game live. I definitely did not have Jefferson Pilot growing up in the Midwest in the suburbs of Chicago. So I missed out on an era of SEC football that you all were very privy to. So I will not be speaking of this game as if I know this from start to finish, different than a couple of the ones that we've already done, wherein I remember, very specifically where I was at that point in time watching this happen. But yeah, this was one of those highlights that I think by day's end, no matter who you rooted for or what exactly you were doing on that given Saturday, you made sure that you saw.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the Chicago version of Jefferson Pilot was maybe like, was it WGN that you guys had? So I guess you guys got Oprah and we got this.
Everybody got WGN though.
Yeah,
WGN was
this was 2002 was way after they were like local. That's a good point. But yeah, I mean, my recollection of this, man, I was in 2nd grade. I had to text my mom about this, and I'm exactly with you. Like, this is the point where sports to me were like superheroes, right? Like, it all felt like a video game. It all felt like a Disney movie. It all felt like, of course, our guys won. And I remember they won an ESPN award for this play. And it
was an ESPY. Yeah.
Yep, they won an ESPY for this play. And I think that's when it processed to me that it happened to my team, but it was a real thing. Like, I think maybe in my mind, we all just watched our sports team win. And like, I didn't process that there were other fans. I was like growing up in Baton Rouge, middle of nowhere. Like, I've talked to you guys before about, I literally grew up in the middle of a swamp. Like, I didn't have neighbors. I was having airsoft parties in my yard. I had 2 dogs named Sparky and Boots. I had just had a tree house built in my yard by like some of the builders that had worked with my mom. So I was out there being an outdoorsy kid. So yeah, I think I had same deal. Kind of watched the highlights, and then when I saw it like kind of rebroadcast and saw the rest of the world reacted to it, I was like, wait a minute, this is not my little made up reality. This is like real life.
Kentucky on the wrong end of 2 best play awards in SB's 21st century history. The second, of course, being a decade after this on the hardwood with a certain watch shot. We don't need to go there, Kentucky fans. This is painful enough for you, but you also still
won a national
championship.
Football natty. You don't have to talk about that anymore. You can
Kentucky,
put it to bed.
Kentucky basketball won a national championship that year. So everything was fine with Kentucky basketball. Okay, so the number 1 song in America, I was way off on this. I had an initial guess. My initial guess was something Linkin Park based. It was not. Do you know the number 1 song in America? Did you look this up as well?
Yes, and we need to trade on this and make each other guess, I think, in the future. But when I looked, it was Lose Yourself by Eminem.
That is exactly what I found as well, Will. That song being nearly 24 years old makes me want to throw up in my mouth. I hate that.
That made me want to be older for a day. Like, I wish I could have been high school age with my boys watching this game, throw on some video games, throw on some Eminem in the background after we won this one. Like, I'm sure that like the experience from like the generation a little bit older watching this game must have been so rad because it was just such a point in history.
It was a huge song on the bar and bat mitzvah trail in our area at that time. A lot of Saturdays. Maybe on this Saturday I was at a bar or bat mitzvah. That was
That's
very much
real hip hop.
yeah.
The
Oh
bat
man,
mitzvah scene.
you want to see a bunch of seventh graders belting out some Eminem. Yeah, that's a great song for it. But I wondered about this too. It was at a time in which in sports we had the jock jams era, but we had kind of gotten away from the pump up song, the proverbial pump up song, and this was the first one in a while that I think could be billed as that. And I just feel like at some point during this day, Marcus Randall, probably in some dated form of headphones with a Walkman, or I don't know if he had Napster, LimeWire, if you know, if he had some version of Lose Yourself that he listened to before this, and he just, was able to dial into that sort of mindset, a little bunny rabbit mindset going into this.
That would be a boombox all-timer. I haven't seen locker room footage. I don't know if cameras could get into locker rooms, no way they could be broadcast, but like at that point. But I feel like, yeah, it must have been really, really like lit in that moment.
A little that was early stage iPod MP3. He probably had something of that, and I guarantee you Lose Yourself was on it. Will, the directors, the coaches here, Nick Saban, might have heard of him. Why do we only do Saban games? No, I'm just kidding. He looks relatively young. He does not look that young, and he did just turn 51 years young during the bye week leading up to this game. And
what day is his birthday, Cotter?
His birthday's Halloween, Will.
It is. He, the day he was dropped out of the portal on the earth to torment us, but not for this day. This is what I still love Nicky Saban, so I can't even give him grief for that.
Yeah, and I would love to know if Saban celebrated his birthday that year, considering that the week before they had a bye week during his birthday, and then they had previously been waxed by an unranked Auburn team. And it was LSU's second loss overall, first SEC loss. They still had a path to be able to defend the conference title, which is important context for this game. And it was a roller coaster season because of the Matt Mock injury. And perhaps fittingly, it was a roller coaster game for LSU. And Saban was asked a few years ago about what he remembered of this game. I think it was the 20-year anniversary or something like that. Or maybe it was like LSU was facing Kentucky or something like that. And he was, I don't remember what the context was. I just saw this video from AL.com. And the first comment that Saban makes is, I remember we didn't play very well. And then he said, I remember they poured Gatorade on the coach already. Well, I have a theory.
Okay.
Saban hates Gatorade baths. If you look at his face in any Gatorade bath he has ever gotten, I think even maybe this wasn't the first one. Maybe this was, I think this was the Notre Dame title. Yeah, I think this was the third Saban title at Bama, his fourth national title overall. The scowl on his face, because I believe he also got hit with the cooler or something like that. But I've never seen a human being more upset to be doused with Gatorade than one Nick Saban, unless you consider Guy Morris, who we're going to get to in a bit here. A very interesting arc. If you are watching this on YouTube, of course, the premature Gatorade bath, such a lasting image of this game. But does Saban hate the Gatorade bath because not just it messes with his very finely coiffed hair, but it is also a reminder of this day, of this game in which Kentucky did the ultimate premature celebration. And there's always work to be done with Saban. You heard players afterwards talk about 60-minute game, 60-minute game. He'd already had that mantra fully down. But does he subconsciously hate the Gatorade bath because of this day?
Connor, I have a related theory to that. I think I'll tell you the answer to this. My dad, kind of being of a certain age, he's always been, he's had me when he was a little bit older. When you get to that age and you have that certain hairstyle and it gets wet.
It's true.
Starts to make you look a little thin up top. So yeah. I think, having starting to look like you're a little bit thin up top, starting to look like you're, wet and you're out of your element. I think there are lots of elements. He's a big control guy. I think not being in control and probably if it's cold. I would say too, did you see his post-game interview after this game?
In the post-game presser, he almost seems more annoyed with how bad the defensive back play was from Kentucky than he was happy that LSU had escaped with this miracle victory. And I think that is just peak Saban. Like Saban had already been in that mode. And it's a good reminder for people like myself that only kind of associate that mode with him at Alabama. But he's always been wired like this. And for him to have that sort of disdain for how that played out, I think it speaks a lot to just the coach and that we remember him as.
And, it was way worse in that era. And I think, people played up, all this staff was screaming. I think a lot of it was because there was no social media and it was on Jefferson Pilot Sports. Like, a lot of these clips are hard to find. So it really was just a more person to person thing. Things wouldn't break contain like that. But what my takeaway that I've written down is I've never seen the winning coach, like the coach on the winning end of a play like this, be more angry. Like, I feel like if you listed the anger of the people in that stadium, he's in the upper third of Kentucky fans, because what it did, Connor, was it deprived Saban of a butt chewing. Like, he was looking forward to that dessert. Like that, he'd been thinking about that butt chewing. I could see him planning out exactly what he was going to say, because that's in the Saban era where he would say, we're talking about process over results. We want to accept things in wins that we wouldn't tolerate in losses. So I think he had his message laid out of how we could build this championship team after this embarrassing loss. And he went, oh crap, now we won the game. Now I got to be happy. I can't give this guy a butt chewing.
Had a double-digit lead, had all of these careless penalties late. They really hurt themselves in a lot of different ways. Had a terrible play on special teams where they get a punt blocked. I mean, you're right. It was setting up for that. And he almost felt like he had this pent-up rage that he just couldn't let out. And instead, he needs to appreciate the fact that LSU gets to keep its SEC championship hopes alive, at least for another day. Of course, they didn't go on to win it, and it was a frustrating end to the season for LSU. But you're right. I mean, this is kind of the moment that Saban maybe becomes the fully formed version of himself. And we see that play out where it's not that nothing is ever good enough. It is that process over results is the ultimate thing that matters with him. And you would just never know. I was trying to think about if there's any coach ever who would have looked like that after winning a game that way. Everybody else just overjoyed. Can't believe this just happened. Oh my God, pinch myself. Even the Kurt Signettis of the world would have found a way to celebrate and be joyous. And instead, man, Saban just looks like he was robbed of a golden opportunity to chew out his team.
So that's funny. That's in first place. Second place, did you hear how Will Muschamp witnessed this?
Wait, say that again.
Did you hear how Will Muschamp witnessed this?
Oh, I did. I did not. So he didn't see the full play unfold?
He didn't see it at all. He was so mad at his defense, he just walked straight into the locker room after they gave up the score.
What?
Yes, he has been interviewed after this, and he's like, great play. Didn't see it, unfortunately. I was so mad at my team. I didn't want to be quoted on camera saying anything that I had to say, so I was waiting for them in the locker room for their butt chewing. Wow. So imagine his shock. His butt chewing was already mid. He was looking in the mirror, hyping himself up like, I'm going to get a butt chewing from Nick. I got to give a butt chewing to my players. I better start it off. I got to set the tone that I'm the first one in the locker room. And they come in, blast and lose yourself. And he's like, what's going on here? He looks at Nick. Nick's mad. He's like, what happened?
I need that footage. Somewhere, someone has a firsthand account of the Will Muschamp range of emotions in those final, really 5 minutes of real time and how that would have played out. Oh, that's incredible. All right, Guy Morris, the Kentucky coach, the man who is unfortunately no longer with us. He is unfairly kind of the scapegoat of this game, at least from a visual standpoint. And I realize we're only adding to that by having this image up. But he is nearing the end of year 2 at Kentucky. He took over a mess from the Hell Mummy NCAA punishments, had the program was in disarray, had more than 36 violations, pretty bad at the time, even worse when you remember that Kentucky was a 2-win team who made that decision to fire Hell Mummy or resign, whatever you want to call it. But Kentucky couldn't even cheat well in football. All right. Like they could cheat well in basketball and figure things out. They couldn't cheat well enough to be able to win in football. And that was just the ultimate sign that you were a sorry program. And that's where Kentucky was at that time. And Mummy has this resignation in 2001. Morris is the internal promotion who is essentially given the interim tag for 1 year and then extended, given the full-time job after that first year, which was just kind of, I don't want to say standard protocol, but you really weren't in position to make that big time outside hire, kind of regardless of what that year 1 was going to look like with him, very much a year 0. And Kentucky is much better in year 2. They are much friskier. They couldn't play in a bowl game that year because of those punishments, but they already had 6 wins coming into this game, which was no small feat for a team that only went to a bowl game 6 times in the previous 60 years. I mean, that's crazy considering that part of that time was with Bear Bryant as your head coach. All right. And this was in the midst of a 33-year stretch without an AP top 25 finish. So, yes, they had the number 7 ranking. I think it was number 7 or number 8. They got into the top 10 in that 2007 season, in which it felt like everybody was. And ultimately, that streak ended in 2018 with Mark Stoops. But you're trying to pull off the first AP top 25 win in 3 years. And boy, did it look like they had it. It looked like they had it. We'll have more on Guy Morris later, but that's the situation he took over. An all-time weird name, Guy, and I say that pun intended. I love the name Guy. I think more people should be named Guy on Earth. I think we need to bring that back. If there's something that I hope the next generation can do, it is bring back the name Guy for just people, no matter what they look like. But Morris with 2 S's always throws me off. It always has and always will. There's just something about it that doesn't sit right.
Connor, there were 2 people I really learned about in this game. We'll get to the other one later. I love Guy Morris. I didn't honestly know much about him before this game, but oh my God. Connor, this is a ball coach. Oh, this is a ball coach. You talked about Nick Saban having a bad weekend the weekend before, bye week, birthday, all that. According to the broadcast, Guy Morris broke his hand the week before punching a locker.
Yeah.
Guy Morris, a 15-year NFL veteran. He was an Ironman, didn't miss starts. He was the guy who kind of followed around Hal Mummy, Mike Leach, famously off of that Hal Mummy air raid tree. He's the O-line coach who was, put in because of a scandal. Texan cowboy. He'd raised cattle back in the day. He rode Harley Davidsons. This is
big bike guy.
Yep. Lad of the situation. I felt so bad for him watching this because you could tell he was just like an unlikely hero that was just a guy who was around, that was a big program guy, that was very who is our guy that took over at Ole Miss that played there after the scandal with Hugh Freeze?
Matt Luke.
He was like if Matt Luke did like HGH. Like he was the most like locked in, swole program guy, bled blue for this team. And so, yeah, I think, and he ended up leaving and going to Baylor and all that. But again, he's from Texas. Like that wasn't that weird for him. Yep. And so, but that being said, what an absolute lad, this Guy Morris.
Wasn't necessarily a household name in the SEC, wasn't around long enough to be that because, like you said, just had the 2 years at this job. But someone who I think if you know him, you can at least associate him with this game. That's how he has always felt for me. And maybe that's unfair.
That's what's so tragic is all that interesting stuff I just said I learned because of this game. Yeah. And without this game, I wouldn't have known about him.
A very forgotten person in college football circles who is unfortunately no longer with us. All right, the A-listers, Will. Got to start with Hefty Lefty. Let's start with Jared Lorenzen, the Kentucky quarterback. Pillsbury throw boy. I always liked Hefty Lefty as the better nickname. I did. Unfortunately, another staple of this game who is no longer with us. It is not the first Hefty Lefty game that we have done. After he died, we did the 2003 Arkansas at Kentucky game. When people long for the days of yesteryear in college football, they go back to a place in which they could watch Jared Lorenzen on Jefferson Pilot Sports. This is that nostalgia for a lot of people. And this is that day where you get to see him maybe not quite at peak form, but darn near close to it. 4 touchdowns on 12 completions. That is chef's kiss. Just absolute chef's kiss. He was briefly sidelined for Shane Boyd in this one. And I should say sidelined, depending on what your interpretation is. Maybe that's not the right verb, but I'm convinced, and the broadcast was convinced, that they only took him out of the game because he needed a breather. And they asked, was that done because of the conditioning? And Guy Morris denied that coming out of the halftime interview. This is fat
phobia. Can you believe this? This is unbelievable.
They said they were just trying to find a spark. I don't know. They say that he's around 300 pounds. I think that's conservative.
He's over 300 pounds.
He's over 3 bills, man. I think he's pushing 320. It's a constant topic of conversation on the broadcast. And I didn't want to include this in the coldest take on the broadcast, but you could have. So Dave Neal, who's on the play-by-play for this game, shares that they saw Lorenzen's mom in the parking lot, and she apparently told him to lay off of their son for his weight, and that Jared's been playing like this. He's been playing heavy his whole life, and his weight's no big deal, which is something that his mom has the right to be able to say when she gave birth to him at 13 pounds, he was a 13-pound baby, Will. He made headlines as a newborn for being 13 pounds. He
She's
was
like,
always
if I can't complain about this, you can't say it on air. Leave my baby alone. I love that. Go ahead, Mom.
Yes, do your thing. You have every right to be able to say that. I will say, he became an SEC legend. He's the heaviest quarterback to ever play in the NFL. This is going to be a controversial take, but I do wonder. I think it's fair to wonder what it looked like if he had played at 250. Because, man, we know what happened post football. We know that his weight was a huge reason that he is ultimately no longer with us. And that is just such a shame to think about. And I remembered watching, and I rewatched this in preparation for this, the Jared Lorenzen Project on YouTube. I watched it about 8 years ago, and it chronicled his late life journey to lose weight and be around to be able to play with his kids. One of which he had, I believe, this year in 2002 was when his oldest was born, his daughter. And in this YouTube special, which is really interesting and really fascinating, it sheds a lot of light on just the person he was growing up through Kentucky and all this stuff, post football. But he was at 502 pounds, and in this special that was done about him, he had lost over 100 pounds doing this. And it's pretty fitting that he went down fighting in this game, because ultimately that's what he did. But man, he was a sight to see, an absolute sight to see. And he adds so much lore to this game. And it's almost unfair that he is synonymous with the Gatorade pour, because he is way more than, and he's synonymous with another very controversial, boneheaded play in this game that we will get to. But he is such a staple of SEC history. And I loved getting the chance to watch another game of Hefty Lefty.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a case of, if things were different, they'd be different. I think that if he wasn't, the person he was, you'd be a different person. All of our story is who we are, right? And I hate to be like too, metaphysical about this, but I will say this: watching these two teams, it was clear to me this is a diet NFL team and this is a good college team. The things that Kentucky does well, they got Hefty Lefty, you have the return game, you have the things that they do well. Those were very SEC at the time. And when people look
R2
back,
Spinner, a big part of
R2
that.
Spinner, I'm going to get to him in a second. And when you kind of look back and go, how come some of these great SEC guys didn't translate? This is what SEC football looked like at the time. And that's why the Saban system was so different, because it was like, oh, no, we're going to build the team he tried to build in Miami later on, in Baton Rouge. And so it was so weird to see, on one side of the ball, you have all this, like, the assistant coaches, you have all the personnel. And on the other side, you have a very plucky, scrappy college team, and the level of success they were both able to achieve. So I don't know if it was in the cards for him, because part of his game was how big and hard to bring down he was, So I don't think you could separate the man from the art in that sense.
It's true. And he had so many instances in this game where he just, and we'll get to it with my some of my favorite lines from the broadcast of this game, but where he just shakes off dudes like it's no big deal. And you do wonder, was he able to do those things just because of his size? This is, I think, one of the most athletic anomalies that we've ever seen in college football. I think in every way. He got every blade of grass that he wanted as a high school legend in the state of Kentucky. And yet, at the same time, there were always questions about his conditioning. If you kind of know some of the history of his story, he would take these very specific pills in the morning to be able to be able to have the energy and try and, maintain this weight. Ephedrine, I think, was the substance that he was very much addicted to in college, and something that he battled. And, I kind of compare him to this. This is going to be a really far-fetched comp, Will, but stay with me on this one. It's almost like early Morgan Wallen in some ways.
I'm so seated for this.
It's almost like early Morgan Wallen in that if you hear some of his songs and you hear some of the way that he approaches his craft, you think this guy's going to have some things to address down the road. That's coming. But my God, is this early stuff special? And
if chairs were footballs, Lorenzen would be Morgan Wallen.
Pillsbury Throwboy could send a chair a long way off the roof of a Nashville bar. This is someone who you couldn't look away from. And you just said to yourself, this is different. This is really, really different. It's maybe not the best of all time, and there could be some struggles down the road, but I'm going to enjoy this version of it as long as it lasts. And I think that's okay to be able to appreciate that while acknowledging there were other clear issues that were impacting the overall product. And maybe that's not the best example in the world because Lord knows Morgan Wallen, the streaming records that he set, blah, 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 is different than a guy that never had a touchdown pass in the NFL. I'm not saying that those two are from a superstardom standpoint, but you just looked at them and thought, that is so unbelievably special. And one day we're going to have to deal with these other things that are probably going to impact your public perception. But for now, we're enjoying the hell out of this.
Exactly. I've been a big dude my whole life. This is probably one of the skinniest I've been. I was much larger growing up, and if you ever want to be a big guy playing quarterback, you'd always get called hefty lefty or Pillsbury third boy or whatever. And I hate to say old representation, but it's cool to see that he was able to be the athlete that he was at that level. And one thing I know from experience, big boys love leg day, so it does help. So on to yeah, dude, it's so true. That's it helps you. You get in that leg press machine, you're like, oh yeah, that's how you get fit as a big boy. On to a guy that, boy howdy, again, owe him an apology for not knowing his game. Artus Pinner.
We got to talk some Artus. You're right,
Connor.
man.
I couldn't stop saying Artus Pinner for
it's
like
such
an hour.
It's a great running back name, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't it?
And then there was like a little, like about third quarter, where they went on that long game-eating drive where they must have said Artus Pinner. They must have said that 50 times back and forth. It was like they got obsessed with it too. And so I was just sitting there doing my Artus Pinner.
I've never heard the name Artus. I've never seen the name Artus. It doesn't even spell like Artus. It spells like Artos. And hearing the Commonwealth Stadium react to him crossing the 1,000-yard mark, just yelling, Toos! I love that. Here for that. He is awesome. Absolutely awesome in this game. He is the SEC Offensive Player of the Year in 2002. He had 1,414 rushing yards this season. Kind of a throwback SEC running back at 232 pounds. First running back in a year to hit over a year, I think they said. It was like 12 games it had been since a running back hit 100 rushing yards against LSU. And that became such a Saban defining trait at Alabama too, of, man, if you get to 100 yards against a Saban coach defense, I'm not saying hang the banner, but like kind of hang the banner maybe. And Artus Pinner was just a beast in this game. Again, one of those guys, we need to talk more about him. And I know that Benny Snell came along in Kentucky history, and Kentucky had some really good backs in the 21st century. I loved me some Chris Rodriguez, big C-Rod fan, of course. But, man, Artus Pinner. I could watch me some Artus Pinner highlights all day.
Connor, do you think he fumbled in this one?
I thought he fumbled because when you hurdle on the play that he fumbled on, or lost control of the football on it, we did not get enough replays in this one. We need to have a conversation about some of these broadcasts wherein you didn't have the first down marker. How did we live at this time? And
Connor, I felt like I owed the SEC officiating group today an apology, because I feel like we could have great points about Auburn, Georgia that we made this year and go back and go, oh my God, look how far we've come. The way that they scrambled to the line of scrimmage after that fumble without a second thought, like you'll hear, you got to get a playoff so they don't review that. And like now it's like a joke. Like it's like, yeah, they can. Apparently that used to work back in the day because they didn't even consider looking at that fumble. And it led to the transition of booze to
yeah. And of course, they had jinxed him on the broadcast by saying, oh, he hasn't fumbled in 2 years. And of course, that you knew that was coming on a day like that. I thought it was a fumble just because usually if you hurdle, what's the part of the body that's hitting first like that, there's a greater chance than not that you're probably still up. But of course, every Kentucky fan who had some sort of obstructed view of that play and the two replays that followed probably thought otherwise.
Yeah, I just think it was close. I don't want to go back and Zapruder it, but they had a reason to be upset in the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I only have one other A-lister for this one. I had Brady James, the LSU linebacker, as an A-lister. And there's a lot of A-list names who I think fit the breakout candidate more so. So we have a lot more there. But Brady James, man, everywhere. Literally everywhere, all over this game. All-American linebacker for LSU. He was in the midst of a 154 tackle season. 154. Like, yeah, in the opener, he had 19 tackles against Virginia Tech. It's like, oh, okay. I think this is someone who was very much capable of playing wherever on the field. And Saban makes the bold decision to move him to middle linebacker going into that season. And I think it paid dividends for LSU, even if this team was ultimately not able to compete for an SEC championship. But you could probably add this to our Jadeveon Clowney reminder that normal people don't play this sport.
That's where I have him. Yeah.
Very specific play. So I'm spoiling this. Apologies for that. But Brady James is chasing down Kentucky's All-American, All-World return man in this one, Derek Abney. And he gets away with what is at the time legal, a wicked horse collar tackle, a clear as day horse collar tackle that doesn't even get mentioned on the broadcast because you're just so amazed that he somehow tracked down this speedster, Derek Abney. You're like, well, that's surely something that shouldn't be happening. And it was a highlight reel play for James, even though Abney picked up the first down. You're like, man, how in the world did he get to him and prevent him from getting the edge? And he would have gotten upfield and maybe been gone and, scored a touchdown on that play. But Brady James, man, they don't make them all like that.
You just literally read my entire Jadeveon Clowney reading the tackles.
My bad.
Just pretend like I made that point.
My bad.
Oh, good. Hey, it's funny though. I'll transition to this. I knew these players from playing Madden. Brady James and the Cowboys.
Yep.
And my guy who I have listed here, Devery Henderson. He needs
breakout
a statue.
Performer. Yeah.
He needs a statue, man. The fact that this guy was on the receiving end of this play, he was a national champion for LSU, and then a Super Bowl winner for the New Orleans Saints. We need to put him in that category of like Joe Burrow, Drew Brees, Archie Manning. Like, this is Mr. Louisiana. Like, this is truly the fact that he was everywhere in this game. The fact that the last play of the game was arguably his second most impressive play of this game. Did you see that touch? Obviously you saw it, but y'all go back and look at that touchdown that he had to close out the first half. I'm looking here, like everyone in the stadium is aghast, even the quarterback, that he caught this ball between two defenders going to the ground. And it's like, it felt less likely that he was going to catch that pass. Once that happened, it was the easiest play in the world for him to go, oh, free ball, to just take off at the end.
You're right. He is the reason that breakout performers exist as a category, because the performance that he has on this day is almost overshadowed by the Bluegrass Miracle. He, in this game, goes from being the third or fourth option in the passing game to having a 201-yard game in which he scores one of the most iconic touchdowns ever. And going into this game, he had 202 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns on the season. So he basically just matched his entire season production on this one day. And you're right, the 30-yard touchdown that he has in traffic at the end of the first half is incredible. I would say it's more impressive than the Bluegrass Miracle itself, because he ends up getting it on multiple deflections, the Bluegrass Miracle. But I don't know how he's able to see this pass. I don't know how he's able to make a play on this and stay upright. But the body control was just second to none. And he ends up, this is kind of, the preamble for the season that followed, wherein he was awesome in 2003 on the national championship team for LSU. And you're right, he needs a statue in the state of Louisiana. Well, I don't know how many people can say this and check all of these boxes, but to do this in the state that you grow up in, where you play high school football in that state. And I should have looked up his high school football stuff. I don't know if he won a state title, but he becomes a star at LSU, wins a national championship at LSU, gets drafted by the Saints, wins a Super Bowl with the Saints. Those things are not all supposed to happen together. And he is someone that meant a lot on this day, of course, but just a 20-year stretch of Louisiana football dominance. I think you got to put him up there for one of the all-time Louisiana football heroes. And I don't think it's just the byproduct of that one play.
This is the level that we're cooking right now, is that we've totally switched categories, but I think we've made each other's points better here, because in my mind, I'm like, I got to make him an A-lister because
he becomes an A-lister.
He becomes an A-lister, but you're right. It's a breakout performance. You're so right. This is what puts him there. And being a little bit younger of a guy, like I said, I imagined him as the Super Bowl hero. I imagined him as the guy who had 99 speed on Madden that I would always throw screen passes to, knew he played at LSU, knew he won a natty. But it took me going all the way back through this to see just how special of an athlete he was. And again, track star in high school, had a track scholarship at LSU, which is harder to do than a football scholarship. And it was just a guy that was able to do everything. I don't think he ever let anyone down in the history of his life. Like, you'd let him watch your dog. Devery Henderson.
That was the old Miami trick. Give them track scholarships, and then you basically get to overoffer in football.
Except LSU has a nasty track team. It's not like that at LSU. Like that's the thing. They don't do that at LSU. You have to be Trendon Holiday. You have to be Devery Henderson, because that track team isn't taking stuff off. It's like Arkansas in that way.
I think he ran like a 4.35 40 at the combine. I'm like, nah, that's one of those guys where the game speed was faster. He could jet. He could absolutely fly. And one of the reasons that he's able to get behind the defense on this final play is a result of that speed, and why he's, even that first step, the ability to squeeze through the two Kentucky defensive backs on the Bluegrass Miracle itself is a testament to his speed. So yes, he's a huge, huge part of this game, of course. And the guy who threw in that ball, Marcus Randall, breakout performance. Literally said on the broadcast, this is a breakout performance for Marcus Randall. Different post Bluegrass Miracle experience than the one Devery Henderson had. But I will push back a little bit on this. He is a legend for this day, right? Not taking that away. The majority of his passing yards came via a Hail Mary and a shovel pass that went 70 yards to Devery Henderson.
Also to Devery Henderson.
But you're only as good as your last play. He said afterwards that it was the farthest that he had ever thrown a football. Not to nitpick again, but the ball went to about the 25. It would have landed like maybe the Kentucky 23, 22 yard line. So it was probably, because you had the tips at the end that extended it, it was probably a wind aided 58 yard throw. So again, not all of us could do that. I think that how far that ball traveled is very much aided by those tips. Still an unbelievable play. And it ends up being just the absolute perfect spot in which, if you put it literally anywhere else, that pass is not completed in that fashion. He had to get it there. And by God, Marcus Randall did that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, this was a period in SEC football history where, for whatever reason, coaches decided that you needed a starting quarterback who was, a gamer, a locker room guy.
He wasn't a starting quarterback. He was the backup to Matt Mock. We need to remember that as well. Right. So he's only playing as a result of this. But you're right. Like, he's kind of checking more of those boxes than.
Wait, look at this. You needed to have, that type of quarterback. And then you needed to have a backup quarterback who was more of a raw athlete. Yeah. And it was kind of fun to see that both of these teams had that. You had Lorenzo on one side, Matt Mock on the other side, that was your leader. That was your captain. You had a guy in the backup who was like, that guy could go. And so, and again, you talked about they brought in the backup for Lorenzen, and you can see kind of the backup on the other side. And it's like, this is just such a moment at SEC offenses because, both guys were under like 50% completion or right around it. A lot of the passes were just these uncorked single coverage pass interference on every play from how we do it today. That wasn't the rule back then. It wasn't like really they missed it, but it was like, okay, if you could just get the ball down the field and give your guy a chance, like defenses were just giving that up. And so it was fun. It was kind of interesting to see that so much of the value that Marcus Randall brought was you're going to get with your legs. I mean, I don't want to talk in hyperbole here, Connor, but I think he took the most illegal hit I've ever seen in my life in this play. He took a play. No flag. He took a hit in this game where one person was horse collaring him backward, and then after the whistle, the other guy was leading with his head and hitting him in the front. And he just popped up, and the refs were just like, cool. And the broadcast was like, what a hit.
Gamer. Look, Marcus Randall, I don't think he had the full trust of Jimbo Fisher, who we'll get to in a second here. Let's just say the entire playbook was not open in this one. And I was waiting for them to say on the broadcast, because this would have been the coldest take, man, you really don't trust him to stretch the field. That would have been perfect.
And what was great about him is you can kind of see Jimbo getting fits on the sidelines. Remember the option play where he's like almost down and he throws the ball sideways? It's like, he's like, this is my day. I'm going to ball Jimbo. I'm the only quarterback you got today. So it was kind of cool seeing him call his own number a little bit.
Can never take this away from Marcus Randall. Can never take this away. Another breakout performer in this one, Will. Joseph Adai. the LSU running back who eventually became a first-round pick of the Indianapolis Colts. He was a redshirt freshman in this game. He had a bad drop on a screen pass early, but then very much made up for it with a 63-yard touchdown, finishes with 91 rushing yards in this one. Number 10 is just a weird running back number. I did not know that was Joseph Adai when they first panned to him. And he had because I think his first action of the game was that drop screen pass. I was like, why is Joseph Adai out here wearing number 10? And that just to me always felt a little bit off. And I had to like go back and check the roster and everything to make sure that they weren't making a mistake on the broadcast. And yeah, Joseph Adai just rocketed number 10. Like that was just a thing.
Joseph Adai was also my breakout performer in this one. I'll add a little bit of extra context to this. So his son actually just got offered by Lane Kiffin.
God, don't say those things, Will. Don't say those. We are old. We are so old. I don't like that. I really don't.
Yeah, there's another LSU receiver. I don't want to get the guy wrong. I forgot if it was Ruben Randall or LaFell, but it was one of those other guys that their son also. And Lane dropped him back to back, and it was like, wow, look at this. Joseph Adai's son is playing football, and he, of course, was on the other end of the Saints Super Bowl. He was the Colts starting running back that was brought in to help Peyton Manning. It's a first-round pick back when that happened. So another guy that was just really heavily relied upon has been part of some of these big historical moments. And yeah, I think that I'm not going to say necessarily underrated, but that was back in the day. Like throwback to, I told you I was just going through LSU running backs after Brian Kelly got fired, and like every year it was 2 and 3 guys that were just studs. And Adai was in the middle of that, after LeBrandon Tofield, before a ton of other guys. But just cool to see, that career kind of blossom. And again, LSU didn't really have like the Artus Pinner, like the one guy. And so, that guy breaking out kind of in front of our eyes was super cool.
Saban played a lot of young guys on this LSU team, and I have 3 more breakout guys for this on the LSU side that are, I believe, all underclassmen at this time. Another one being Marcus Spears, guy that's very much known in TV circles right now. Of course, the LSU defensive lineman, good old number 84. Yeah, the originally starts off as a tight end, switches to defensive line this year. Just a crazy, crazy athletic dude, big swagoo. Dealing with an ankle injury in this one and still was making plays. He had a huge play on a little reverse that they had with Abney, where it's so disciplined. And he really was this guy that I think was at the beginning of Saban establishing that trenches culture of just have a guy that'll sign up to do anything for you. Ultimate team guy, and it ends up allowing him to form into this great, NFL defensive lineman as well. But this season, as a sophomore, he had 16 pressures, 3 TFLs, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, and not a surprise at all. Like it's considering the athleticism and considering the fact that like his wife Aisha played in the WNBA, that his kids are freak athletes. Like I don't know if you've been following that, but his daughter's playing volleyball at Texas. His son is the number 1 recruit in the 2027 basketball class. He's 6'9", and it's a stud. I feel like I've been seeing Instagram videos of him for a long time. But man, I've always loved Marcus Spears, and I remember him, when he was getting, I think his media reps in at SEC Network, and he was always very, very kind to me and someone that I have never heard a bad thing said about him. Like what you see is what you get type of dude.
It's always weird, a la, Bobby and Marlon Humphrey, when like the parent is a great, like good to great NFL player like Spears, and then the kids are like, hold on, you might be a little bit more athletic, but yeah.
Del Curry, Steph Curry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like if you marry a WNBA player, that'll do it. So yeah, a guy that honestly has had an impressive life, and it might just be getting started.
Yeah. Speaking of dudes in media who played in the trenches for LSU, Andrew Whitworth, who had a huge, huge block in this game. I believe it was on that shovel pass that ultimately went to the house for Devery Henderson. This is someone that Saban was, I think, I don't know if I remember him saying this directly, but it was considered one of his favorite players that he ever coached was Andrew Whitworth. And a key established the culture guy for him at LSU. He's a second-year guy in this one, and he was already a freshman All-American. So he's not like a full-on breakout guy in that way, but was playing big-time minutes for this LSU rushing attack. I was wondering this, Will. Is there a person more synonymous with the Blazer hoodie combo than Andrew Whitworth has become? I don't know if he's trademarked it yet or if he's close to it, but yeah, it's someone that I feel like we're going to be seeing on TV for another, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, he's a guy that I've always loved. He's a guy that I would say did it the right way with, staying with the Bengals for as long as he did and then moving teams kind of at the end. And just been a joy to kind of see him grow as a broadcaster and a guy that I remember fondly from my childhood. Again, a guy that I would always try to find a way to pick up when I did a Madden franchise. And so, yeah, it's just super cool to just watch him be this awesome, relatable guy.
Michael Clayton, the LSU receiver, not a true breakout game, but also not quite an A-lister, yet more relevant than a prominent extra. I didn't really know where to put Michael Clayton. I just wanted to talk about him for a second. But one of these guys that kind of takes a back seat to what Tevry Henderson is doing, and he became a true star a year later on that title team. His Wikipedia tells me that he's still the only player in LSU history with 3 consecutive 700-yard receiving seasons. That's too random of a stat to be wrong, so I'm just going to assume that it's right. First round pick, had an okay NFL career, but injuries hurt him. Also, and really this is the reason I wanted to talk about him, he is the cousin of our guy Noah Cain, which I did not know. The former LSU and Penn State running back, a guy that I remember doing a story on when he was at IMG Academy way back in the day, and had no idea that he was related to Michael Clayton. I probably should have known something like that. Maybe I did know that and I just forgot it.
Yeah, he's like one of the, I would say, few LSU receivers that kind of didn't like turn into what we thought he was going to be, and then therefore his all-time legacy kind of takes a hit there. But if you talk about like the greatest receivers in LSU history, I think he's right there with some of the guys that are often brought up. And again, that's why it gets so hard to talk about college versus NFL guys, because what they were doing, like offensively, again, you got to put yourself back in time. The Jimbo Fisher offense, the Will Muschamp defense were like revolutionary. Well, you know how old Will Muschamp was for this game, Connor?
31 years old.
31 years old. So, like, back when Jimbo Fisher was an innovator, you know what I'm saying? It was the fact that you had 2 and 3 great receivers. It was the fact that you had this offense that was so vertical and so dynamic, and you had the screens and the things that you weren't really seeing, the 2-back sets on the shotgun. And so he was just kind of the terror to face against LSU, and then you had the bruising ground attack. But yeah, I think that he goes underrated as well for younger fans.
I have one more breakout performer in this one, and it's another receiver. Aaron Boone, not that Aaron Boone, the other Aaron Boone, the Kentucky wide receiver, almost had the Thanksgiving Randy Moss game. 3 catches, 112 yards, 3 touchdowns. That is, that's how it's done. He did have a drop on the first throw of the game, but I'm convinced that this game got him a cup of coffee in the NFL, practice squads and whatnot. Also, maybe the 2,000-yard season he had at Snow College back in the day also helped. And if you can find a picture of this Aaron Boone, again, not that Aaron Boone, Yankees manager Aaron Boone, like the other Aaron Boone, if you pull up a picture, Will, you'd think this guy was in 98 degrees. Not Backstreet Boys, not in sync, 98 degrees. Google this. Tell me I'm wrong. Okay. This guy had the exact look. I'm now convinced that he had some sort of past life in a boy band at that time. He is the most boy band player I have seen in college football, and very specific to this era, wherein the frosted tips feel like they just kind of work. But Aaron Boone, very different than probably the Aaron Boone that everybody was thinking of.
I think you're right on there. I think that kind of the late 90s, the early 2000s is maybe the hardest era to tell your kids that you were cool and have them believe you, for that reason, that this was like the coolest you could be at that point in time. Like, I'm sure people loved him. I'm sure he was the guy around campus. And, looking back, those trends have not made their way into TikTok, I wouldn't say.
Puka shells are back though, right?
Well, if they are, Connor, you could break one out for next pod, and I'll believe you.
My guy, Benedict Polizzi.
Oh, dude, I love him. We need to make a bet on here. One of us just wears a puka shell and doesn't bring it up again.
That would never say anything.
Hard. Yeah, just never say anything. Just if you know, you know. If people are like, this is the guy with the puka shell. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's just my thing. Right? You see him with it gets caught in the headphones every once in a while. Just have to pull it out of the puka shells.
Connor, I'm gonna ask you right now on air. If I want to bet against you, would you wear puka shells on Fine Bomb?
I don't think I could. I need something on the line here. I need something. I have to have lost a bet.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying if you lose a bet, can I put that on the table for our next bet? Because I will say puka shells on Fine Bob.
Let me think about that. It's not a no. It's not a no. It's not a hard yes. We're at a delicate time right now, Will. We're at a delicate time right now, transitioning, kind of in between jobs. We're figuring some things out. I don't know if I could be full on Puka Shell's guy on SEC Network.
You guys seen Connor? He's kind of his Guy Fieri era since that whole.
Like, some people do eat, pray, love. Connor does Puka Shells. Just the thing.
Anyway, anybody else for breakout performance?
No, that's all I got. We got a lot of prominent extras to get to here.
Oh, yeah.
Some of which we've already discussed.
Let me kick us off there. Because again, we've basically hit on each other's here. I have one thing for prominent extras. It is a battle, Connor. It is the real game, kind of between the game, which is the showdown between the special teamers here. Derek Abney and Donnie Jones.
Yeah.
Okay. Donnie Jones, who is one of the best NFL players on the field here. LSU's punter. And he starts off this game with an 86-yard punt. In fact,
unbelievable.
Maybe the longest punt. They said the longest punt that's ever happened against Kentucky. One of the longest punts I've ever seen in my life. And this was a cold take from the broadcast. I'll just throw in here. They were like, Saban's been kind of on him because he punts the ball too flat. And then he proceeded to just kick the ball to the moon, hit the moon, have it come down, and then land on the 1-yard line. It was one of the most insane. I was like, oh my God. And then on the other side, White Lightning. The Caucasian gentleman, a little bit like white chocolate, but way faster, who had already at this point set the NCAA record for kick returns in a season. And buddy, every phase of this game was electric. They would get into special teams, and it was a complete advanced chess match between Donnie Jones and Abney, because every single time it was either a return that changed the game as led up to the final play, or one of the sickest, most field flipping punch you've ever seen.
The 86-yard punt, I had to rewatch. I don't rewatch many punts, but I'm like, wait a minute. He punted that out of his own end zone, and he just pinned him. He just pinned him. He said that the returner was set up at the 50, and then he watched it sail over his head. Now he gets a favorable bounce. It was indeed wind aided. They talked about the wind on the broadcast, and it was definitely windy that day, and it helped. 86 yards, man.
86 yards is 86 yards. And I have a round-by-round breakdown here, if you'll let me indulge here. First off, we have the 86-yard, nuke. So round one goes to our guy, Donnie Jones. Round two is a block. So you have two guys on special teams that could have gotten part of the game ball at points in this game. Okay, next time he gets blocked. So it's like, oh my gosh, you've potentially cost your team the game. They end up settling for a field goal. Round three, Abney comes out and muffs a punt. He's now a decision maker or a deciding factor on both sides. And then round four is the Abney return that sets up the Kentucky field goal at the very end. So, I mean, again, this is actually the most electric matchup in this game, I think.
It is a great chess match. You're right. A special teams battle that does not get talked about. I definitely had no recollection of that whatsoever. All the big time special teams plays, good and bad, that happened in this one. That's a very worthy inclusion into prominent extras here. Will, the coordinators in this one on the LSU side, they are household names: Jimbo, Muschamp. They're a combined 68 years old, because Jimbo is 37 and Muschamp, as we mentioned, is 31. And Jimbo, I wondered, because I don't think we got any in-booth shots of Jimbo on the Origin Sports rewatch that we had here. But Jimbo, over under 2.5 times in his life that he has bragged about the play call for Bluegrass Miracle. It's got to be over. It's got to be over.
I would love to hear him interviewed on this, because he's such an interesting dude. And you got to wonder, there's an element of luck here. It's very Jordan-Hare reminiscent, where what was supposed to happen didn't happen, but what happened was even better. And so I think the offense played well. I think the offense had a pretty great game. I think it was the defense that was more in the hot seat. So, yeah, I mean, Derek Dooley was also on the staff. And, of course, you hit on this. These great coaches, as much as people talk about, they're taskmasters and, they don't take any nonsense, they really do take gambles on younger guys, younger coordinators. Happened to Belichick, happens to Jay Johnson at LSU, younger players, younger coordinators. That's how Pete Golding got his start, was under Saban as well. And
Kirby, same thing. Kirby took that mantra with Schumann, with Lanning. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Same deal there. So it's kind of funny. These guys are no nonsense. They wouldn't put up with it. No. They know talent when they see it, and they often really do hit, and they really do defend these younger guys too, which is how you end up with the young Will Muschamp at 31 calling the defense. And why Derek Dooley, that was between the two, being a position coach, should have told us something.
Probably. I wanted more Muschamp in this one. I thought, given how much the LSU defense struggled at key points, and again, it wasn't an overall terrible performance, but you're right. The tongue lashing it was coming. It was absolutely coming for the blown lead and some of the miscues that they had. I needed more Muschamp. I think that's one of those where if we shot this in revisionist history cameras, we would have been dialed into how animated he was, because I feel like I was searching for him on the sideline whenever they would show Saban, because surely he wouldn't be very far away. And he was probably doing something like the very famous Saban Muschamp tongue lashing that always goes viral every once in a while, where they're both freaking out, like just on 11. And I don't remember what game that was, and if that was before or after this it had to be part of the 2002 season, I would think, with how much frustration that was baked in. Maybe it wasn't, but that to me is always what I'll think of when I'll think of Muschamp at LSU. And who knows, maybe there was one of those moments in this game, but I don't think the broadcast was able to capture it.
Yeah, and what I want to see is, like I said, the scene that Muschamp had pre-planned for what he was doing in the locker room was insane. I mean, was he faking a heart attack? Like, what was he doing?
How many whiteboards went down?
Like what was he doing to let Saban know he was madder than him, to where he didn't get treated like, hey, why don't you get a jersey on? Sit down. You're going to need some of this, all right? Like, this is your fault too. So, yeah, I think that we could really, again, see where some of these guys are going later in life.
Can you imagine being a defensive player and having to wait, knowing that Muschamp is in there, just seething in that locker room, waiting to just let you know how bad you are at football?
It's like an evil chip witch. One's on that side, one's on this side. You're in the middle. You're just getting squished. You're like, I have nowhere to run. I got to go in the bathroom. I don't know where I'm going, man.
Buddy, no thank you. And then Matt Mock, we already mentioned him earlier. He is a prominent extra because the LSU starting quarterback was hurt in this one. He broke his foot midseason. The weird sliding doors that I thought about, could he have thrown that pass as far as Marcus Randall did? Again, a wind-aided 58-ish yards that Marcus Randall threw that football. Probably not, but maybe. I don't know. But would LSU have been in that spot with a healthy QB1? Also, probably not. And this game is probably just an afterthought if Matt Mock is out there. But he, of course, makes up for his absence by leading LSU to a national title a year later. So not shown in this one. Don't know if he was even physically there in this game, but was definitely mentioned several times.
For sure.
Brent Peace, the Kentucky offensive coordinator. Random story. Only reason I wanted to bring him up here. I remembered being home on winter break in 2010 when I was a junior in college. And I had just finished, like that semester, I covered Indiana football for the student newspaper. And I say finished because December is not a time in which Indiana football previously played football. So I was indeed finished that semester. And I had to do a story on Indiana's new offensive coordinator that they had just hired, who was going to work with Kevin Wilson. And it was Brent Peace, who at the time was coming over from Boise State, where he was the receivers coach. So I got his number, called him up, great conversation, talked for like 20 minutes. Couldn't have been nicer. And 2 weeks later, he decides that he's going back to Boise State because some guy named Brian Harsin left Boise State to take the OC job at Texas. And selfishly, this is how 20-year-old Connor's brain operated at that time. I just remembered thinking, that dude wasted 3 hours of my winter break. How dare he? That sucks.
And look at you now. It all paid off.
I have not talked about Brent Peace since then. I have not talked to Brent Peace since then. Maybe at some point we will revisit that conversation where we talked about all those great things that he was going to do with the Indiana offense that never actually happened. Favorite line from the broadcast. I have, this is one that we've hinted at. You could probably plug this into any Jared Lorenzen game. You really could. But remember, Dave Neal is on the call for Jefferson Pilot, and Lorenzen had this scramble going to his right. Remember, hefty lefty. Byron Dawson, Melvin Oliver look like they both have an angle on Lorenzen, and he stiff arms them and manages to throw it away. It's an impressive throwaway. I don't know if PFF would chalk it up as a big time throw, but it's a big time throwaway nonetheless. And Dave Neal goes, we're talking about a guy that weighs 290 and another guy that weighs 260. And Lorenzen just batted them off like they were flies. Yes. And in my opinion, Will, that just adds more evidence to the fact that Jared Lorenzen was not playing at 300 pounds. He was playing at like 320.
Leg day.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, nobody is better suited to throw. If you're a big dude who's in a college weight program like that, you can take two of those guys with you, because that's what you're doing to show off to your teammates. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was my favorite line from the broadcast, just because and anything that just digs into all things hefty lefty is always great. What about you?
Absolutely. I have a couple of these. Number one was the story again during the Artus Fest. The story where Artus Pinner quit on the team. They said about an hour after he got the head coaching job, after Morris got the head coaching job, Pinner walks in the office and said, "Coach, I'm not doing this air raid stuff. I quit." And then he ended up being the SEC Player of the Year as a running back, like you said, which is like pretty funny that they just like kind of put him on blast like that. And then speaking of being put on blast, right? There was a Big Otis number 18. They just came for him really quick, where they were like, "Hey man, this guy's an interior design major." And the exact quote that I have pulled up here. Hold on. Hold
You
on.
don't see that. You don't see that a whole lot. An interior design major in college football. It's the type of thing that could get brought up on a broadcast like that.
Oh yes. And the direct quote was, "If he makes a suggestion on where to go to my house, you got it, Big O." I love that they just showed the defense, the hair on fire, him as the captain, and then they just out of nowhere go, "And by the way, he's an interior design major," cutting their butts up.
That's the time, and this was before the HGTV boom, but you would have had some sort of graphic of him designing things or something like that, or like a model view of his apartment and how finely crafted it is. Look at where this furniture piece is. Ooh, look how he's got really, this is before open concept, but look at the open concept thing that he really plays into. Yeah, they would have been all over that.
The Blitz package. Yeah.
Yeah. Coldest take from the broadcast. We will get to the obvious.
Oh wait, hold on. I had one more. This just goes to show how far SEC football has come. Because there was a point where they were doing the legal disclaimer for Jefferson Pilot, and they were like, just to let you know, the broadcasters are compensated for their opinions by Jefferson Pilot, not the SEC. So anything kind of like take it up with them. And there's a pause, and one of them goes, "You're getting compensated for this?" And then the other goes, "Yeah." And he's like, "I thought they were paying me in brownies." And then he's like, "Yeah, I saw you killed about 6 of those before the game." In the middle of a legal disclaimer in an SEC football game that would be an all-time classic, they're just like, "Yeah, this is kind of like Mickey Mouse. We're all having a good time here." Like if that happened today, there would be so many emails and executives where it's just like, "You shouldn't. Hey, you're disrespecting us. You're disrespecting the SEC. Go." But guys have fun now. I'm not saying like some guys can get away with that, but the way that they were just so flippant with it, I think was pretty cool.
The only person who would do that on a broadcast is Tom Hart. Tom Hart would absolutely.
I was going to say the SEC Network guys can get away with that because they have a little bit of that cachet built up. But the Jefferson Pilot guys are going, "Ugh."
You're getting paid? What? All right, coldest take from the broadcast. Will there are a lot, a whole lot, especially in the last minute of this game. But before we get to that, they said earlier that the R2 Pinner hasn't fumbled in his career, and then, in my opinion, it was a fumble on the hurdle early in the second half. That's 100% on the announcers. You can't put that on R2 Pinner. No way. That is entirely on the broadcast. That they should have. I don't know if Kentucky coaches could have come into the broadcast booth and said, "Hey, that one's on you. We need you to do something to be able to make up for it." I think they would have been within their rights to do something like that. You just can't do that.
That was an all-time curse. You're so right about that. Yeah, and we talked about him a little bit. I had that written down. I will say, man, one thing that was interesting to me about this broadcast, I kept waiting for this game is over, and we can't see the commentators almost ever. What were you gonna say?
There is. So
there are, but they go back and forth over it because one guy was going to say I couldn't tell who was who, but one guy was like very clearly was like there are 11 seconds left. You never want to call it over. And the other guy's like, "This is a monumental win for Kentucky." This was, and then the first guy counters back. There are a lot of great athletes at LSU. There's a world-class athletes at LSU. I wouldn't quite count them out yet. So whoever guy number one was, warm take guy who was correct, guy who was covering his butt.
You are absolutely right. The first one that I heard that was just freezing cold was Dave Neal saying and setting up the scene, 29-yard field goal for the win. And he's saying that as Kentucky is lining up for the chip shot field goal in a tie game to take the lead with 15 seconds left. And they ultimately make that kick. But saying 29-yard field goal for the win, obvious, okay? And then right before the ensuing kickoff, it is the color commentator, Dave Archer. Confusing that they're both named Dave and they both kind of sound similar. Good luck keeping track of that. That's darn near impossible. But Dave Archer says of Marcus Randall, I don't think we can forget how well Marcus Randall has played in this game. He's going to get lost in the shuffle of this thing, but played a tremendous game for LSU. Buddy, he will not get lost in the shuffle of this thing. Let me tell you, we
He
will
be
remember
immortalized in the shuffle.
Marcus Randall is sitting somewhere 23 and a half years after this game happened. And he's like, remember when I made that throw? That was pretty sick, wasn't it? He did add, Dave Archer did say this, that it wasn't over. And as you mentioned, there were some great athletes out there in white jerseys. But then he mentions what a monumental win this is for Guy Morris. So you get the two freezing takes that sandwich the best take of the day. And the single best take, if he had just shut up after he said this, if he had just simply said, some great athletes out there for LSU. Don't count this. This is not over just yet. He looks like the winner, and Dave Neal looks like the idiot. Instead, way too definitive on the "this game is over" stance, and I don't think we can give him full credit for saying that.
Yeah, it's just always hedge, guys. In an era of freezing cold takes, you just got to be like, especially again, Devery Henderson again, most expected play of all time. When you look back at it, if I had an all-time number one pick to catch that play, looking back, Devery Henderson. So very true. Just like I said, diet NFL team, all of that. Yeah. So it was very, I think that they were not like, they were appreciating the scope of the game without going too deep into the it's over bag. But I think there were a couple they wanted to have back.
This is the type of game in which awful announcing would have written 20 stories about it. Because of all those individual lines probably would have been a story in and of itself. But before the true internet era, well before the social media era, of course, the Jadeveon Clowney reminder.
Really quick. There was one too where basically there was an absolute, just what we call in Louisiana, Pele, where one of the LSU linebackers takes out Derek Abney, and they kind of get into it a little bit about like, why didn't the one of them goes, why didn't the umpire call that? And you see the replay, and the umpire is looking for holding, as he is supposed to do, forward. The play happens directly behind him. He's not looking because that's not his job. Either guy's like, no, that's not his job. He heard that hit, but he couldn't see it, basically. Okay, well, he's like, if it was so bad, why didn't that guy call it? He's like, that's not his job, and this is one of the dirtiest plays we've seen. We don't need to say that. That's fine.
Yeah, I love it when there's clear disagreement among the two broadcasters over a call, or it needs to be explained to them. We talked about that with the 2009 SEC championship as well, where they didn't know the rule that the play was dead after the ball hits the upright on an extra point and you can't return it off of that. And both Gary and Vern were looking at each other like, this is a live ball. This could be returned. And they had to get a producer to step in and be like, nah, that's actually not how that works. Yes, we need more of the I don't have any idea what's going on moments on a broadcast. I'm honestly surprised it doesn't happen a little bit more often, but yeah, that play was clearly an instant cold take. The Jadeveon Clowney reminder that normal people don't play this game. You already mentioned the 86-yard punt. Have to include that. Longest punt in LSU history, by the way. I mean,
I bet
86 yards. It's incredible. And so that play was followed by the first scoring drive, which ended on a play in which I think if you have the 5-minute Jared Lorenzen highlight reel, I think you have to include this play. He had this beautiful scramble on this drive in which, of course, his weight is brought up. Why wouldn't it be? And then the play unfolds where he's at midfield, flat-footed, probably like thrown off of his back foot more so than anything else. And he gets great protection until one Marcus Spears finally gets pressure on him. And he's got to kind of throw over him a little bit. And it's a flat-footed bomb. It is a reminder that he was born to throw footballs. And he threw the piss out of that football, and it lands in the arms of one Aaron Boone, who makes an incredible play on the ball in the end zone. And it's just, man, it is a great, great all-time Jared Lorenzen, unorthodox, don't teach this at home, kids type of throw.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing. That guy, like, again, it is not an ironic, big guy can move. He's an athlete, man.
Yeah.
I'm very excited because I found one here that I'm almost certain that you're not going to have. And so Oh, wait. No. Sorry, that's for the next one. I talked about Marcus Randall previously. No, so my Jadeveon Clowney one is just the Brady James thing that you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier with the 300 tackle seasons in a row and him catching Derek Abney, which is, again, if you watch any part of that guy's career, one of the most insane things. A play that was like a 20-yard play that was everyone was just like, oh my God, the highlight here is on defense. Like, so yeah, Brady James, underrated athletically. And I have one for the next one, but yeah, we already talked about the big hit that was taken there. So
Okay, so I think you're gonna have more on this than I will for the Trent Richardson. I can't believe they didn't make it in the NFL. And maybe I have too much context because this is at a time where I know a lot of these guys more so for their NFL careers as opposed to their college careers. So I didn't really have a ton that stood out. Like you can't say I don't think you can say Lorenzen because of the well documented weight issue. I don't think you can say Henderson because I think Henderson, as we mentioned, had a really solid NFL career and won Super Bowl with the Saints and was certainly productive. I didn't think Marcus Randall was due for NFL greatness. I don't think anybody watched this game and that was their takeaway. I will say R2 Spinner only having a high of 349 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns in a season in the NFL surprises me somewhat for that era. I thought he could have worked in that era, and maybe, the fact that he started his career off with the Lions probably didn't do him any favors, but yeah, that was the only one where I thought he fits this category. LSU had dudes, but there were dudes that were early enough in their career to where you didn't think it was as inevitable. So I didn't want to necessarily stretch to find one that fit for this.
This is where I have one. And forgive me, because I feel like both Jadeveon Clowney and Trent Richardson could be a guy that disappointed a little bit in the NFL. This guy popped off film to me. Marquise Hill. 6'7", 310 defensive tackle. Like when you're looking at Marcus Spears and you're looking next to him and there's a guy significantly larger than him that's a nose tackle, the guy that went in the second round of the NFL draft, got drafted to the Patriots in the second round, like the dynasty Patriots, who obviously were famous for having these giant nose tackles and just couldn't figure him out. Guy from New Orleans that was just basketball size plus a couple of biscuits. I need to go back and watch more of his highlights because boy, is that a space heater.
Basketball size, but it was the Kelvin Benjamin.
Yeah, it's not just one biscuit away from basketball. He's a whole biscuit tray.
That was a Booger McFarland back in the day.
Yeah. That was an old timer by Booger because that's accurate about Kelvin Benjamin.
He's a Popeyes biscuit away from being a tight end. Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah. Those are good. But yeah, I mean, a game in which there were, I think, a lot of guys that were all right in the NFL. Like you can include Joseph Adai in that category, but not necessarily the, oh my God, they took over this game and they were just total bust, total non-factors in the NFL. The thing you didn't know / remember until rewatching or researching this game, we talked about how good this game was before the final play. And that was the thing that it just gets lost in the shuffle of what a wild, chaotic finish this game was. But like, just to go back here, it looks like LSU was about to run away with this game. And it was 21-7 in the second half. LSU feeling like they had kind of calmed the storm, where Kentucky came in really confident. And Randall actually had Henderson open on a deep play that would have made it 28-7, probably all she wrote from that standpoint. It wasn't like Kentucky, they were able to string some things together in the passing game. But again, Jared Lorenzen had 12 completions in this game. He was like 12 for 26. At 28-7, you're pretty much saying this game is over. And instead, they can't take advantage, even though Devery Henderson has this step. And then Kentucky later blocks a punt deep in LSU territory, takes advantage of the short field to make it a 21-14 game. And then it's kind of off. We're off to the races here. That ending, even without the Bluegrass Miracle, it also gave us that crucial muff punt by Abney where he lost it in the sun or something like that. Losing in the sun in your home field doesn't happen very often, but happened in this game. And then you get the key late defensive stand by Kentucky where they force the 3 and out to be able to get the football back. And you have some late game hefty lefty brilliance in this one where the touchdown pass that he had to Boone, where he just threads the needle over the LSU defenders. Just a very special play. And Kentucky had a bad snap on an extra point. And if not for that, Kentucky would have been up 28-27 in this one instead of tied 27-27 with 2 minutes to play, which I do think changed kind of how both teams were approaching this. And we almost saw Marcus Randall take a safety on 3rd and forever. And then he nearly throws a pick after he somehow escapes this. It was just kind of bonkers for the latter half of the 4th quarter of this one is worth your time, even if you've already seen the Bluegrass Miracle a million times.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, like, again, how great of a game this was is what was shocking to me. One thing that stuck out to me and watching it back was that the broadcast, they weren't able to show this, so I'll take your word for it, but the broadcast said they caught Nick Saban trying to call a timeout
Yes.
to ice the kicker before the Kentucky field goal.
That's a good point.
Obviously, I mean, immediately when Michael Clayton goes down, he starts calling that last timeout. Like that's why they were able to set up and call this play. So, wow, Nick Saban, greatest coach ever, bailed out by officiating. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, if Saban had his way, he would have iced the kicker. Now, hey, did they miss the field goal? Did they not? You know, I'm glad they made it, obviously, for SEC history. But if he had his way, and if the officials had given him, his way, they wouldn't have had that timeout at the end, and the clock would have probably just died with 2 seconds left.
How did Saban not get this timeout called?
He didn't get the superstar treatment yet. They were like, Nick, we don't see you over there. We're going to, they weren't in the era of 3 consecutive timeouts yet. No, but I mean, you're right. And that's something that I think now is more accepted is the gamesmanship of I'm going to call the timeout the last very second, and maybe there's more of a process to it now. But that's a great question because they said they saw it clear as day and kind of were wondering, like, because remember, they got a delay of game penalty when they started this drive, and the broadcast was saying, well, like, that's, kind of why, like, the team was disorganized and maybe they should have gotten that timeout and it could have helped them. But in reality, that not getting that timeout to won them the game.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too for the sequence of the next category that we're going to do. Did you have anything else for thing that you forgot? I mean, there's a lot of we're very young when this game happened in 2002, but anything that you just was totally out of sight, out of mind until rewatching this?
I think we hit on about all of it to this point. Yeah.
All right, so it's just the most obvious when the losing team blew it, probably that we've ever done. When the pass was tipped instead of batted, that's probably it. But Kentucky blew it before that, and here's why. They run in this 27-27 game. Kentucky runs a quarterback sneak to pick up the first down, and they call timeout, which I wasn't even aware that they were trying to pick up this first down because we didn't have they weren't showing the yellow line. So I'm like, what? Jared Lorenzen's just trying to get it to the center of the football field, whatever. And there's 15 seconds left. How do you not hold the ball for the last play to be able to kick the ball with 3 seconds left? Why in the world did they call this timeout with 15 seconds left? Because Brent Pease is losing his mind on Jared Lorenzen on the sideline, and they weren't bringing it up on the broadcast. And instead they were defending it by saying, well, if you botch the snap, you get another crack at it. And I'm like, if you botch the snap, just go play overtime. If you botch the snap, you're not going to make that next kick afterwards anyways. You have a chance to end the game. Why in the world would you leave any time on the clock? And it to me, that is just so egregious to make that mental mistake in that moment. And based on the reaction on the sideline, that again, I'm going to give Guy Morris a little bit of a break here. That was on Jared Lorenzen in that spot. And so it's horrendous clock management at that point. There is no way that Kentucky should have been kicking that field goal to take the lead with 15 seconds left. If they just kick the field goal with 3 seconds left and let the clock wind down, because again, it's first down, ball game over. LSU doesn't even get to return a kickoff, much less attempt the last second Hail Mary.
This is 10,000 things have to break exactly in the right way. I mean,
yeah.
You're so right. And I mean, it's the fact, looking back at how angry Saban was, I'm going to zoom in on the fact that, okay, you kick it to this great returner, which may have been against coaching. I don't know why you would kick it to that guy at that point in time. You get a call that I don't know if I've seen before or since, which is an incidental face mask call that's 5 yards.
Yeah, they used to do that, 5 versus 15.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he did it, but it was like an oopsie situation. Ooh, and so that was kind of funny that got tacked on. But 2 back-to-back defensive penalties. So so the fact that they were able to move that amount of space without using timeouts, without burning clock, just on LSU miscues back to back to back. It really adds context to how angry Saban was, how Muschamp was gone because it was kind of all in his guys. One special teams guy, we can't really blame special teams for this. And so, yeah, I think the way that drive was just so chaotic and weirdly orchestrated to get Kentucky that close, especially when you talked about at the very end, Kentucky ended up bungling it too, was just all-time weird drives in college football history.
It was so frenetic. It was almost like a college basketball ending. We're recording this a week before the NCAA tournament, and it almost felt like one of those college basketball innings in which you're reminded 18 to 22-year-old kids, man, you just don't know what's going through their head at the end of some of these all or nothing type moments. So then, of course, after Kentucky makes the field goal, then we get chaos. It's 9 seconds left, and LSU is on their own 14-yard line. LSU down 3, one timeout left. And again, as you mentioned, Saban tried to get that timeout in to ice the kicker, but ultimately he gets to put that timeout in his back pocket, and it was significant. It really was, because LSU has a botched snap that would have ended the game on this play from the 14-yard line, but instead officials rule it dead because of the delay of game, which is a blessing in disguise for LSU. So then it's back to the 8-yard line, which then somehow LSU loses a second of time. It went from 9 seconds to 8 seconds. That second just disappeared. It just went into the void somehow.
I wanted to go thank a referee so bad after this game, dude. Like, genuinely, it's like, hate to credit them, but boy, howdy, it used to be worse.
Oh my God. Saban's freaking out about it too. And he's saying, add 1 second to the clock. When else would Saban ever say, add 1 second to the clock in a crazy ending? I don't think that ever happened again. But then you get the pass, as you mentioned, to Clayton over the middle. And LSU still has that timeout, so they don't have to get up there and spike it. They can call the timeout, and they get their 2 seconds left. So Lorenzen, with 2 seconds left, douses Morris with the Gatorade. And I can't remember, he had a lineman that was helping him as well. And Dave Neal says on the broadcast, I think he'd feel a whole lot better if the time had run out. Guy Morris looks more pain than anyone ever has to that point getting a Gatorade bath. Okay? He just does. And it's almost like he knew, wait a minute, there's still a chance. And then the next play, it all happens. It cuts from the Gatorade bath to the shot of what ultimately unfolds, that if you search this play on YouTube, it's going to show up like this. And it is just something that you have to rewatch a million times over. Randall drops back. He unleashes this throw from his own 17-yard line. The ball is tipped multiple times, starting at the 25-yard line. Devery Henderson somehow comes down with the bobbling catch in which he himself tips it. He never breaks stride. Don't know how that happens. Slips past or through a pair of flat-footed Kentucky defensive backs, hands in the air, touchdown. It is insanity in every possible way. Dave Neal nearly breaks the microphone with his call of this. And just in case this game didn't have enough cold takes, the first image that's shown after this play is the score bug saying Kentucky 30, LSU 27. There are a lot of other things that play out over the course of the final, 30 seconds in the aftermath of this game. But when you watch this happen in real time, Will, I think I rewound it 9 times exactly to try and see where the ball was tipped and who was most at fault. And I just came back to, I think it's a wholesale fail on the part of Kentucky in just about every possible way.
Again, there were some cold takes in this broadcast, but there are some moments of absolute clairvoyance. And one of the Daves said twice before this play, you have to knock the football down if you are a defensive back here. Like, clear as day, he's like, look, you're a defensive back, got to knock it down. And then right before the ball snap, he echoes it a second time. Just remember, knock the ball down. Don't try to pick it off. And then in that replay, you just see the guy going up to pick it off. And it goes, you didn't listen to the broadcast. And then in the end, the same dude goes, basically tried to tell y'all, this is why DBs are coached to knock the ball down.
Adding to the scene, Kentucky fans, they are on the opposite sideline. They rip down the goalposts because they think the ball falls to the ground and the game is over. And the amazing thing is that the students who had all gotten to the sidelines, and there is this shot. I know we criticized Jefferson Pilot, but the shot that they captured.
I love Jefferson Pilot.
I know. I criticized some of the elements of the lack of camera angles, but the one that they did get was Marcus Randall, as he realizes that, oh, well, it's okay that Michael Clayton didn't catch the ball, because you know who did? Devery Henderson. And you see him react in real time, and he is celebrating this moment as Kentucky fans go from pure euphoria to pure disbelief, all in about a second. and it happens simultaneously. It's very rare to see that happen. And they almost react to him reacting because they can't see that far down the field. All they have seen from their vantage point is that Michael Clayton did not catch this pass. Therefore, it must be incomplete. And man, they show Morris and Lorenzen in disbelief on the sideline. I listened to both radio calls afterwards. It's one of those where you just have to. Tom Leach, the legendary Kentucky radio broadcaster, says, how much heartbreak. Fans are up on the goalposts. I don't know why. Yep, he's right. And then Jim Hawthorne on the radio call for LSU is so excited that he says it's Jack Hunt who catches the game-winning touchdown pass, not Devery Henderson. Also of note, Jack Hunt is a white and Devery Henderson is not. That's how discombobulated he was.
And he plays defense. I'm so glad you brought that up because I thought I imagined that because I read that in the preview that I was like, well, the broadcast didn't say that. Did Kentucky get that wrong? The Kentucky broadcast was clairvoyant of why are they taking these goalposts down. The LSU broadcast, Hawthorne, what a legend. Actually went to school with his grandson actually at one of the places in Louisiana. And he just all time confusing a white number 8 defensive back who had just been flagged for a PI on the other side of the ball with the track speed African-American number 9 wide receiver who had been doing this all day. Like, it's just such a clear, give me again, one draft pick on that day. It's going to be him.
To be fair, I think every LSU fan probably blacked out in that moment. You could have said worse probably, but it adds to it. It really does. And even when you listen to, because like if you watch the highlights of it on SportsCenter or something like that, and then they'll add in the local call and then they have to correct it when they kick it back to, Reese Davis or something like that, whoever's doing the highlight. And it's so funny to listen to that. It kind of adds to it of just how chaotic this truly was, Will. And the more I think about it, the less I blame Guy Morris for this. And that's going to sound bad because I'm sure that in the aftermath of this, he took a beating, an absolute beating, because yes, there are 100% going to be coaching elements of this game that he wished he could have back. I get it. But if you read about this and if you listen to the way that Kentucky players talked about it, they were all communicated very clearly to bat the ball and not go for the pick. And it was understood. And there is only so much you can say in those moments to convince 18 to 22-year-old kids what to do. And I do believe that Lorenzen went rogue on that timeout call and made it too early. So there shouldn't have been any time left on the clock to begin with after Kentucky makes what should have been the game-winning field goal. It's an all-time defensive blunder by that secondary in every way, the batted pass, and then the flat-footed defenders who let Devery Henderson squeak through and they're almost like stunned that the ball could possibly be tipped back. And the crazy thing, and you mentioned earlier, LSU's play design didn't work. This was a failed play. This was a broken play. The original play is that Clayton is supposed to reach up and tip it. And he's supposed to be the one that essentially did what the Kentucky defensive backs did for him on this, but he can't get to it. It's over his outstretched hand. And I think that's truly what Kentucky fans saw when they rushed the field.
Yeah, I mean, Guy Morris, I'm going to say I blame him probably 0% for this game. If you look at what went wrong for Kentucky in this game, okay, Artus Penner fumbled for the first time in his career. Okay, Abney fumbled for the first time in like a incredible NCAA record season. Okay, his leader, team captain quarterback Lorenzen didn't go down at the right time. Okay, the defensive back
he was fine to go down. It was just when you called the timeout. Just
right,
exactly. You don't have to call the timeout immediately.
Yeah. They were how he basically managed the clock at the end and then called the timeout. It's like, okay, and the defensive backs did something that even the broadcast knew they shouldn't do. Everybody made a mistake. I feel like, but the coaches, you get the ball back, and it's like, again, every coach is going to say prevent defense. That I just refuse to believe that a coach went up there and said, all right, guys, this is our moment. Pick 6. We got to do style points here. I think that is just athletes acting like athletes, which is, we had in this game an offensive lineman for Kentucky catch the ball and celebrate a fake first down after getting a penalty on the messed up extra point. Dudes just be doing stuff when you're an athlete, like that's my great example there is if the ball gets thrown you in your line, you just catch it sometimes. This is what you do. Like as a kid, as an athlete, you just catch the ball. And same deal here. It's like obviously the coaches didn't tell them to do that. So when people say, oh, and I've heard this now more than ever, which is so stupid. When people say, oh, well, the college game is just a night and day different product from the NFL. The college game has never been closer to the NFL game than it is right now. When you look back then, guys were genuinely like going to class and making errors. Now these are pretty close to professional athletes. That criticism made sense back then because you have plenty of guys making these type of boneheaded plays just because they're young.
I don't want to say it could have never happened in the NFL this way with all of those.
With all of that, there's no way. I mean, somebody's getting fired in the field. Like,
it's the sickos committee parlay that hit at the end of this game. We make fun of the Mario Cristobal ending for the way that Georgia Tech played out a few years ago, where how do you not kneel the football at the end? That's all you have to do and you win that game. But the comedy of errors is so bad. And, you know, it brings us to what would have happened if the result was flipped. And I think Guy Morris is kind of part of this and kind of not. A month after this game, he resigns and leaves for the Baylor job. And mind you, that came after a 4-0 start, which was Kentucky's best start to a season since 1984. He got a 2-year extension in season, and it didn't matter. Ultimately, he didn't want to stick around, whether that was because of, you know, the bowl ban that year, whatever. Like, they still played really hard and still looked like a very motivated, improved team. Whatever it was, maybe it was just the Texas roots that drew him back to that job, even though that was not an attractive opening at Baylor at the time for a variety of reasons. But all we know is that he willingly left Kentucky for a Baylor program that had a 1 in 31 mark in Big 12 play the previous 4 years. And if this play is flipped, or this result is flipped rather, I don't know that Morris stays if his heart is truly pulling him back to Texas. All right, to quote Ella Langley, he's choosing Texas. But a win here, I think it would have avoided embarrassment. And I think that he ultimately felt that. How could you not? It is an all-time embarrassing, don't want to relive this moment. And whether it's your fault or not, you're still at the heart of it. And it's almost one of these things that it's not to say that anytime you experience embarrassment, you want a change of scenery. But that was at a time in which the "Want to Get Away" Southwest commercials were always on. And this is the college football embodiment of that. This is a guy who was doing things that were so fun at the time at Kentucky that season. And it felt like a team that was kind of playing with some house money a bit, and they're on the rise. And then they have this harsh dose of reality that, you know what, maybe it's just always going to be like this. Maybe you're just always going to be considered the runt in college football. And so I wonder if he would have stayed longer, if, you know, this era perhaps for Kentucky football isn't so marred by that. But, you know, Kentucky, if they're ultimately able to have their best season in 18 years by winning this game, then, you know, maybe he's there for 3 or 4 more years. He was only making $400,000, by the way. $400,000.
Not worth it.
Ball coach in the SEC.
Not worth it.
I don't know that he got I don't think he got like a massive raise at Baylor, but he was not being paid particularly well at that time.
Yeah, I mean, that day will take 5-10 years off of your life. And I mean, you know, if you're, to quote Tom Brenneman, a man of faith, you know, if you're a man of the universe, whatever it would be, and you have a day like this where everything that I just said goes wrong, it's like, I'm not supposed to be here, man. Something's just telling me, because again, he's going to be remembered from that. He's going to be immortalized, but he didn't do anything wrong. In my opinion, like, I would literally say 10%, the lowest I could ever imagine a head coach having no responsibility for something like this. So I think, you know, when you look in the mirror and you say, what's best for me and my family, I'm going to go get some ranches. I'm going to go back to my family ranch or whatever. Dude, that's the other thing. He played in the NFL. He was probably, you know, decently wealthy. You know, the guys that go into coaching, usually just kind of like keep their money because they end up making $400,000, which is not like something small. You know, it's enough to keep you going. So he's probably looking around going, okay, I just broke my hand on a locker. I'm from Texas. I probably have a ranch I could go back to. Get me the bleep out of here. This is a bluegrass hell for me.
Hey, he's always maybe considered kind of the interim guy. You know, it's tough. Sometimes, you know this, you've experienced this before. I feel like I've experienced this to a certain extent of like when you start off in one way at a company, sometimes you're just always kind of seen in that light. And being, an offensive line coach who gets promoted, it's kind of always like, oh yeah, like how do they really feel about me? Do they always kind of think that I'm this specific thing? Not everybody has the Eric Spoelstra rise within, a franchise, a program, to where they do truly earn that. They start from the bottom and then they truly get to that top level of respect, and they're, internally speaking, that's communicated. But, it's interesting because we find out that, Mitch Barnhart is resigning as Kentucky's athletic director, retiring. He's taking a job within the athletic department. And, this was a decision that I don't think it made him look particularly good in the eyes of Kentucky fans. We talk so much now about how impossible it is to poach an SEC coach, and to get your coach poached for the job at Baylor. Surely it set Kentucky back at a time when they felt like they were on the rise. And, that did not play out that way for Guy Morris.
Yeah, no, I think, again, like, I hate to just keep saying things were different back then, but you have alluded to it in all the ways the SEC has changed. That if an SEC coach of almost, any program lost their head coach to like a Baylor, like, it's one thing if James Franklin used for Penn State, which is the example you brought up at the time, but like, it's torches and pitchforks time at this point in history. So it just kind of goes to show the amount of things that were different, but how many things lined up to kind of get them up out of there.
Yeah, I don't know. And well, I think it would have been really difficult, I think, for him to probably sustain long-term success at that time. But ultimately, you didn't get to see that chapter unfold. Do we have anything on the LSU side that would have changed with Saban if this is a loss? Because maybe you could connect some dots and say, like, the 2003 team the following year that wins a national championship, maybe it never has the never say die mantra that this young LSU team embraced. I don't know that you could say that they embraced it fully, because they still were an 8-win team in this 2002 season, but maybe there's some of that experience that they drew from in 2003, but I don't know that it changes that much on the LSU side with Saban. It probably adds another decade of Saban going into locker rooms and saying, play for 60 minutes. Yeah, they kept talking about afterwards how he had a play like this that happened to him when he was with the Browns and stuff. So maybe it just confirmed that, and maybe more so added to his beliefs. But I don't think it's a huge changing sliding doors thing for LSU.
And it's actually so crazy because we just talked about this with Nick Saban and how, the standard at Alabama that he walked into and losing to Florida twice would have really been kind of a big problem for him, but with LSU, they were just coming off of, the DiNardo era. LSU had already been a national championship participant, not in the game, but like in the discussion, right? Like, I want to say it, not participant as in
they won the SEC championship the year before.
Yeah, they're exactly. Yeah, like they went from being trash to being very good to great. And I don't think anybody, that was when they were calling him Nick Saban. Like, that's when they were still like, we're back, we're good, we're ranked. Like, so I don't think that loss would have done anything. Like I said, I think it would have just made Nick Saban's week a little bit better if they lost. Like, exactly what you're saying. Like, I could see the Instagram grind accounts that like have all the high saturation and grain on them going, hey, when I was young, we had this play against, they called it the Bluegrass failure. And like, I feel like he already had that speech written where he was like, gonna talk about 60 minutes here. And he was like, I can win the championship now that we've lost this game because these guys are entitled. And so I think he had to create that a la Kirby Smart, y'all had us going 7-6 the next year. Cause to your point, they had just, in the SEC championship game, the next year they would go on the win. So I think he was looking for some adversity and he was a little bit upset, but I really don't think this game changed his legacy too much or could have in a negative way.
I agree. The player image that we'll always remember when thinking of this game. There's one obvious one. There's one less obvious one. The obvious one is the Guy Morris Gatorade bath.
Yep.
It is literally a cold take. It is a freezing cold take. And again, it's not as if he said, go get the Gatorade. It's dump time. That did not happen. But not until Ed Orgeron's sticky premature bath 16 years later in the 7 overtime game at Texas A&M, a game that we have done for Just Meant More. Go back into the archives and find that one. Do we get another moment in college football that's anywhere close to that? Where it's just so to be prematurely sticky. And I think this is actually water. If I'm guessing, it's a Gatorade cooler, but I think it's water. I hope it's water for the sake of Guy Morris, because there is nothing worse than being sticky. And this is
Here's the question. I'm glad you bring up that Coach O game. Let's say we just, after the loss, Texas A&M, Bluegrass Miracle, both coaches covered in Gatorade. We just put them in a 1v1 arena with all their rage. Which coach do you think is winning?
I don't bet against Coach O.
This is a 14-year NFL player. Like, this would be a really good fight. So much rage combined in these two guys. Like, I think it would be an all-time event because they had to. Again, back then, guys are a little bit different. I'm sure he had to be a little bit more polite with the media. Coach O didn't really have that geared to him. But boy, howdy, again, just so angry, so similar to Coach O.
Are we talking double-digit Red Bulls for Coach O at that point?
So many Coach O's by that. It's like PEDs. That's a good point. He's moving at 2x speed.
Yeah. Moore's looked so visibly frustrated in this one too, which added to it. If he's happy, it's even worse. But I think the fact that he looked pained added to that moment. It was almost a preamble for it. And I just think that it makes the image stand out so much more, knowing how this moment it very clearly surprised him and caught him totally off guard. It's not even like he's laughing and kind of going to the middle of the field, but it felt like he was really ticked off that the ice bath was happening when it did. And why could you just wait till there's zeros? It's a cautionary tale in so many ways. And every Gatorade bath ever that happens with time on the clock, my head will go to this. Unless it's a 2-score game. Gatorade bath, 1-score game, time on the clock, you are asking for a Bluegrass Miracle to happen in your face.
It's laughing in the football god's eyes. You're so right.
Ronnie Riley, also the Kentucky linebacker, is being consoled by an assistant afterwards. And he's just so livid, and it almost looks like he punches the assistant, but not really. It's kind of just like, I can't believe this just happened. Like, I just found out my best friend died type of anger and sadness combined into one show of emotion. And he called it afterwards the single most hurtful play of my football career. That dude looked just devastated, absolutely devastated. You want to tell me that regular season college football, it used to matter a whole lot. That bothered him in so many different ways. So that's those two instances are always what I think. I don't think necessarily of Devery Henderson. I think he gets carried off the field by LSU teammates. Like, that's not whatever. I don't think of Saban basically being ticked off as he's going to the sideline and doing the post game interview either.
It's funny because that was the image in my mind that I always see. It was Devery. I had that as the background issue. Like, take that off, put the Gatorade bath on. You're so right. Like, that's like, there's not a positive LSU angle here. It's a negative Kentucky angle.
Yeah. Well, I think that'll do it. We haven't talked about this, but should we do for our next one prayer of Jordan Hare? Should we have not done it yet.
They're similar, and I think we've done enough Nick Saban. I think the people are getting, I think that's enough Nick Saban for a minute. And we have, a little surprise coming up, I believe, in the works as well, potentially featuring Nick Saban. So yeah, I think that's a good one.
Prayer of Jordan Hare. We just had Aaron on this week. I will text Aaron some insights about that game. I know that game is painful, very, very painful for him. So probably won't pepper him too much, but yeah, that'll be next. That is what we will do next. The plan for our next pod that we are recording on Monday, Shane Beamer. So look out for that. Yes, looking forward to that. Great to be able to have him back on. And if you have not, please subscribe to the OG Kickoff on YouTube. You can follow us as well on Instagram, the OG Kickoff. Send us emails. We want, if you were there, if you witnessed the Bluegrass Miracle, if you witnessed any of these games, please email us, the OG Kickoff at gmail.com. We want to hear your stories from these games. Follow us on Twitter at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.